Russia-Ukraine peace talks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kanchan. Of course, a very warm welcome to Mr. Ali Ahmed in the studio, and I'm sure Norman is also in the show with us on Zoom. I want to just add on that the Kremlin on Monday said that an expected meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff will take place today in Moscow. And of course, this meeting is to understand how this Russia-Ukraine peace talk is going to come forward and what are the bilateral agreements between the United States of America and of course Russia. And on the other side, we have Turkey's economy expanding 3.7% year on year in Q3. Of course, the gross domestic product at current prices surged 41.6% to 17.42 trillion Turkish liras, which is of course 409 billion US dollars in July and September. This is just to show how Turkey has developed over the last couple of days. And of course, Secretary of War, and of course, if you would call it Pete Hegseth, and Donald Trump made it clear that the designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. These are the words that were uttered by spokesperson Caroline Levitt of the White House.
Is the current ceasefire in Gaza likely to hold or just a temporary pause before renewed violence? Because you always say it is a fragile ceasefire.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kanchan, for leading me on towards this Gaza issue. I just want to say that yesterday we figured out that Benjamin Netanyahu is accused of corruption cases in which he had sought the pardon from Israel's President Isaac Herzog. It was met by protesters trying to influence the president in not allowing this pardon. And of course, the Israeli Knesset's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee resumed discussions on a new military conscription bill on Monday amid growing disputes within the ruling coalition. This is the news that is coming out as of today. And of course, as live updates are following on, Israeli forces continue demolition, destruction around Gaza City. And of course, Gaza City, not just Gaza City, is also the West Bank. So these acts are definitely acts of war in some kind of senses, but they are conducting war with a civilian population as far as I see it. And yesterday, there is some kind of celebration between the Gazan people because Palestine had won 1-0 over a football game with host Qatar. So that is one of the aspects of aspirations of the Palestinians. But coming back to the issue of this fragile ceasefire, as you led me on, I don't think this is any longer a ceasefire. I think this is just to keep the mediating countries at a bay. They have used the hand of the United States in this specific regard. And just last week, we have seen torrential rain already making the lives of Palestinians much harder to survive. I'm pretty sure that everyone knows they live in these makeshift tents across hospital boundaries, which is of course devastating to see on a daily basis. But what is the future of Benjamin Netanyahu in his own government is a matter of question.
India pushing arms and energy deals. Russia's president is in New Delhi for a two-day visit aiming to strengthen energy and defense ties, offering missile systems and fighter jets amid mounting US pressure. Shamsul Alam Pantho, what you gonna say after this breaking news?
Thank you for the question. And of course, Russian president was earlier on during the BRICS issue and of course the Shanghai Cooperation summit that have held earlier. They were talking about a suspected visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin into India. But of course, this is an exchange of not only economic ties but also military ties. And I know that for some extension that India has been a factor to fueling economy or keeping the economy of Russia's economy safe, given that Russia has been conducting this war for 3.5 years with Ukraine. And of course, the burden of sanctions on Russia, tariffs on Russia, these are elements to cripple that economy so that they cannot conduct their war or their attempt at deterrence towards Ukraine, even though Russia is known as the oppressor in this war. However, this relationship is only severing ties between the United States administration and India earlier, as you know, they had been slammed with a huge tariff because of their closeness to Russia. So I want to see how the US administration sees this visit.
Russia bilateral ties, including $14.65 billion Rupur nuclear power plant and other investments. We have more than $100 billion bilateral trade relationship with India. If these two world superpower get ties, get bonded, do you think Bangladesh has a chance to face a little bit tough and obstacles in geopolitical decisions?
Thank you, Mr. Kanchan. Of course, if the relationship between India and Russia are coming to a very closer relationship between the two parties, there is a chance of Bangladesh being left out of this investment by Russia and of course receiving by India. But I have been looking at social media as of recently, and a popular politician, a very young politician from Bangladesh, is becoming very popular in Bangladeshi talk shows and Bangla talk shows as well. And he said, we are not anti-India, we are anti-aggression. That means any side that shows us that we are under them or below them is definitely someone who we should take note of. And of course, in the last 15 years, that is the stance that India has kept. So today there is a chance, there is an opportunity cost with our neighbor that they must also understand the national priorities of Bangladesh. And I must give credit to that young politician that he has brought it up on a
national. Would you mind to name?
I think his name is something Hadi, Osman Hadi that he had.
Every sovereign country has right to make their own decisions. Why neighboring country will dictate us? Where we'll go, where we'll do business, where we'll create relationships, why?
Thank you for the question. And of course, when one looks at the geographical aspect of Bangladesh and its close proximity with India, there are multiple territories here that we must consider. One of them, I can give an example. India calls that other 7 sister states that we know as Arunachal Pradesh. Well, China does not even recognize this location. That is not a fight for Bangladesh. That is a fight between India and China, where one does not recognize this piece of land. A tourist from UK had was supposedly to go to Japan, and she used the Chinese port as a transit, and the Chinese officials had said that you are invalid. Your passport is invalid because your birthplace is Arunachal Pradesh and we do not recognize this place. These are the comments that were made on behalf of the Chinese side. As of recent days, India and China are understanding what differences they see between these 7 states. And from what we see in Bangladesh, we have a 4,000-kilometer border alongside India and with Myanmar as connecting. But we do not understand that these borders must be reinforced. First, it has to be border sovereignty, then it will be sovereignty of the land inside. In 1965, Singapore was kicked out of Malaysia. They realized some of the aspects that they realized was that they must be self-servient, self-sufficient. Their language had turned into English, English language is accepted worldwide. They had made sure that corruption had gone down, and politicians were paid ultra-high premiums so that they would not take part in corruption. So these are the methods that Singapore used to reinforce this island. So question being again, how as a nation in Bangladesh are we going to understand these issues? Back in 2018, we've had over 1 million refugees come into our lands, and we did not, at that time, we did not retaliate with Myanmar. I think we should have. Back then, we should have understood that what are the indifferences between these two lands. Today, this refugee crisis is among the world's one of the most heinous, if not demanding refugee crisis. Of course, the interim government here has spoken about a peaceful transition of Rohingyas back into their homeland. But we have seen, as of recently, we have seen no kind of update.
Exactly, sir.
And then we know that our neighborhood have nuclear-powered weaponry, where in Bangladesh we are still back in 1980s. We definitely need a revamp of the military infrastructure that we have here, the military strongholds that we have here, and be ready at all costs. Because if you look at European Union, they have surface-to-air missiles at every border installation they have because of such giant called Russia trying to project their power onto these places, hence these surface-to-air missiles. But if you look at Bangladesh, it's only barbed wire with a fence. We are still back in 1980.
I just want to ask you, do you think China would be our, or Eastern Asia would be our next look forward?
Thank you once again. I want to keep this short, but I must say we must know how to poke India and get our interest back in return, and in metaphorical terms, poke the bear and run away. But if you look at China, they have to make a very difficult decision regarding the 7 states that I said, and definitely we are still waiting to see how India and China play out this recent diplomatic issue.